Hello everyone, welcome back to Code with Beto. I'm super excited to have you here. And in this video, we are going to learn how to build a Notion clone using React Native Expo with Prisma ORM. This is going to be a local first application, which means we are going to have a copy of our database in the device, in the local device, which means we can, create queries and do it directly to the database inside the application. And this getting data from this database, which is going to be an SQLite database, it's going to be very fast using the Prisma ORM and also pretty easy. So let's see the demo of what we're going to be building. Here on the right side, as you can see, I have this device. And actually this Notion clone is going to be very nice. And also we're going to support features like drag and drop. So if I drag and drop and, for example, this root, take it to the top and then the list of features. By the way, let's open this one. Here, I wrote down the features because we have a lot of features for this application. We're going to have Markdown support, which means you can have something like this. In this case, we have, titles with the hashtag symbol, and then we have bold. We can also have inline code and code blocks and mentions like you can see down here. Now we can also update this. And if I open my keyboard, as you can see here, we're also going to have this toolbar for the keyboard, which allows me to update the icon or just start typing here and hit done. This will update, as you can see here. And inside of this Markdown, we can also have support for more files, as you can see here in the recursive file management, which means we can have files inside files. And we can keep going and keep going. But, in this case, we can have the support that we're going to be building is going to be so that the user will set the limits of what we can do with this application, which means having a lot of children for a single file or having many in a single one. For example, this one, it has 2. And this one lives inside the list of features, right? So this is pretty cool. Then this is going to be local first, like I was mentioning before, which means we're going to be using SQLite database to store this information in these Notion files, the Markdown, the titles, and everything is going to live locally in the device. But later in the future, when we create the second part of this video, we're going to integrate a sync engine that will allow us to sync this database or the local database with the database that we have in our server. And that will open many doors for our application and in the ability of integrating new features, for example, sharing files with other users and, syncing data when we have network. But if we don't have network, the user still will be able to use the application and access everything. And once the user has a network connection, we will sync all the operations that the user has made while he was offline. So this is pretty nice. In this video, we won't cover the sync engine yet. And that takes me to mention that because we're going to be using, let me show you here, the React Native Prisma ORM. So right now, this is early access. That's why we don't have yet the sync engine. Actually, the Prisma team is working on the sync engine. And once it's available, I will create a video to show you guys how you can sync all this information that we will have locally in this application to your database. But because this is early access, of course, we can expect to see some changes in the API, in the ORM, in the structure. So I would be careful. I would be careful if you want to integrate this in a production application. But I think in my experience building this application, I think it's really nice using this ORM. It will provide us with hooks. And this is compatible with Expo, of course. It will provide us with hooks that allows us to interact with the database in a very easy and fast manner. So we have hooks like use find many, use find first, and use find unique. It's very easy to use, very easy to set up. But I'm gonna be using this one. Now let's continue checking out the demo here. So we're going to have dark mode support as well. And if I change this to dark mode, you can see that this is how it looks. We have this example of the root, which has a child 2, and we're missing a child 1 here. And the way we can create files inside files is just by pressing this plus on the right. So let's name this one child 1 and hit save or done. And this will take us back to the home screen, and it will show the new created file, which is child1. And then inside these files, because we're handling this in a recursive manner, and actually we have only one component that is in charge of rendering this expandable list of files. It's going to be pretty clean, which is really cool as well. We're going to learn how to handle the the recursiveness of his application, but we can also keep going. Like, for example, if I want to create a new file inside of child2, I can just press a plus and just write test for now and click on done, and this will create this file. Now on top of this, we can select the file, and this will take me to the file where I can edit and make some notes, but also it will show me the inner files inside this file. But if I now go to the child2, for example, we can see that child2 has one inner file, which is test. And we can also go from here and start editing here. And this is pretty awesome. We can go back to the root and then to the tabs. Okay, so pretty nice. We can navigate basically in any way. We can go directly to the test in here and maybe write something here. We can write Markdown. So this is a title. We can have mentions, for example, if I say here, or we can write, a website like codewithbeta.dev, and this will be highlighted. So this is pretty cool. Let's press done. We can come back here and we will have this information. So that's pretty nice as well. We can minimize this. Oops. Yeah, this will take me here. This is how it looks. From here, we can, recursively go through each screen and then go back. This is handled just by one screen. So we don't have to have a lot of code just for this functionality. Then I can minimize this. Of course, I can drag and drop to sort files. For example, if I want to have this Prisma ORM to the top, let me just grab it, if I can do it, and put it at the top, and then reload the app to make sure that the sorting is being stored as well. By the way, the sorting is going to be stored in the database as well, which is pretty nice, which means if the user opens this application in any other device, they will find the same order that they set for this list of files. Okay. All right, then we also have these recent edited files. So we are picking the last 6 files. And for example, let's say that we edit the local first. So let's make some edit here and then hit save or done. This will bring my local first to the first place because this is the last file that I was working on. Then from here, let's use the SQLite. Let's write something like test, hit done. This will bring it next. And of course, if we reload the application, this will remain the same way. Now for these little boxes, we're using Expo linear gradient, but we can also easily add support for images if you want to bring from the local library of the user some images for these files. We can do that, or we can have an extension. I mean, from here you can do whatever you need, guys. But I would say that this video is going to focus on the main functionality, which is using the Prisma ORM, defining the schema that will allow us to have, this simple yet powerful recursive system for the files. And the cool thing is that everything is handled directly from the database, so we don't need to deal with the state directly. We can just put it in the database, and because this is local, it will be very fast, so we don't need to do any fetch or any async operation. This will be very quick. Okay, and we can also search for files. Now in here we only have the files that we edited today, and then we also have a list of the last week files. And finally we can create a new root file, because this one won't have children or parents, so we can create a root and hit done. And as you can see, this is the root. I can put at the top or just right next to my Prisma ORM. It doesn't really matter. We are updating the sort in here. And then from here, we can create new files. By the way, I want to mention that, let's just create this one test. I want to mention that if you delete one of these files, like for example, press on these three dots and hit delete, it will delete the children as well, which is good. So if I delete this one, everything will go away. Okay. Yeah, so this is how it looks, guys. This is the application. Dark mode support, local first. We will have this drag to sort functionality, which is really nice. And it's actually one of the features of the real application in Notion. And yeah, so if this is something that you're interested in, stick till the end. I'm sure you will learn a lot. And by the way, if you want to become a master in React Native or React with TypeScript using frameworks like Next.js or GitHub and Git, check out the courses at codewithbeto.dev. I'm sure they will be very beneficial for you. And one more thing that I want to say, I'm super happy to announce that we just crossed 10,000 subscribers in the YouTube channel. So thank you so much, guys. If you're watching this, please subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, other than that, I'm super happy that we crossed this milestone. And yeah, let's keep creating amazing videos. Thanks for supporting, thanks for subscribing. And let's start with this video. Okay, guys, so as you know, if you go to the projects section at codewithbeto.dev, you will find the latest projects. So if you want to get the source code of this application, you can just go to codewithbeto.dev, and then just select the search or select the project that you want to follow up, and you will find the dependencies down here. Of course, we don't have this project yet because I'm recording this video right now, but once it's available, once you are able to watch this video, it should be here now. So you can just come here and copy the dependencies that we're going to be using, and as well some extra documentation for the project that we're going to be doing. Okay. All right, so let's jump right in. I'll open my terminal and let's start by creating a new Expo application. So I'm going to be using Yarn. I'll create a new application inside my test folder, and by running create Expo App, the name of my application will be Notion Clone Video. Let's hit enter and let's wait a little bit until this project is ready. Alright guys, so the project is ready. We can access this new folder called Notion Clone Video and open this on VS Code. So I'll say code. Alrighty guys, so here we have the newly created Notion Clone Video project, and the first thing that I want to do is install the dependencies that we need for this application. So I'll close the Explorer for now and paste these dependencies. You will be able to copy paste this from Code with Beto, the project, once it's ready. So let's go from each one of these through this one of these dependencies. The first one is going to be the Expensify React Native Live Markdown, which is this great dependency, which is this great library for having an input that supports Markdown. And this is what we are using for writing Markdown in here. So for example, if I type something like this, or if I create a title like this, this is a we're able to do this because we're using the React Native Live Markdown. It's a great library. And also I'm using this one for navigating to the details of each screen. And yeah, this is how we are doing it. So make sure that you install this one if you want to have live Markdown support. Then we're going to be using the action sheet, React Native action sheet. This one we'll be using for the delete and these options that you can see here. For example, the sort option will be manual or creation date. We can cancel this. This is the action sheet. So we need that one. Then we also need the Prisma client, Prisma React Native to handle and get access to the hooks and get the connection to the database, and basically all the local first logic will live inside this Prisma client and Prisma React Native dependencies. And then we need the React Native quick base 64. This is a pair dependency for Prisma in React Native. Then for the UI, we're gonna be using the linear gradient from Expo to get these, random linear gradients that we can see in the recent files. And of course, for the very nice feature of dragging and dropping these files, we're gonna be using the draggable flat list dependency. So let's go ahead and hit enter. And let's quickly go to the Safari in here. I want to mention a couple things for the Prisma ORM. So as I was mentioning before, the quick base 64 is going to be a per dependency. So we need to do that. And then for Expo, we need to add, basically modify the app.json. And let me make this bigger because I just realized that it's hard to see, I think. We need to add this plugin, Prisma plugin, in the app.json. So we need to do that. And one more thing to keep in mind is that we need to build the application. We cannot use this in Expo Go. We have to use Expo development builds. Okay, so we need to run the per build command to generate the iOS folders. Okay, so like I was mentioning before, once the project is ready, you can just come here and copy the dependencies. But yeah, the dependencies are installed. So now let me just close the terminal and let's go to the app.json so that we can start modifying and adding the Prisma plugin. So here in the app.json, we need to have a plugin, but if we scroll down, because this template comes with Expo Router, it's inside these plugins. So we need to add the Prisma React Native. So let me just copy paste it here, paste it here, comma, and hit enter. So in this case, I'm putting the Prisma plugin first, but I don't think it should be any difference if we put it at last. Okay, but this is the only configuration we need to do. Once we have this, we need to build, actually pre-build this project to generate the iOS folders. So let's run npx expo pre-build. Now, of course, you can do it for Android and iOS. This will work for Android as well. But in this case, let's just focus on iOS for this video, so that it won't take long. So I can specify the platform by passing the p flag. So I'll say npx expo pre-build p iOS, okay, and hit enter. So this will ask me the bundle identifier that I want to use for my application. I'll just leave the default one because this is just going to be for this video. So let's hit enter. This will start creating the iOS folder here, as you can see, and installing the CocoaPods dependencies and generating the native code for my iOS. So the next thing that I like to do is just go to my git ignore, and because this folder, it's being generated every time that we run this command, we don't really need to send this to GitHub. So I'll just add the iOS folder in here and hit save. This will ignore this folder from GitHub, okay, or Git, okay, and it's ready, as you can see there. Now, before I start this project, we need to do a couple more things. So let's go to the Safari. Let's go to the Prisma React Native. If we scroll down here, you are going to see that we need to enable React Native support in our schema file. So if you have used Prisma before, you should be familiar with the Prisma schema. So let's go back to VS Code and create a new file in the root of this project. And I'll name this one schema.prisma. So the schema.prisma will be the file in charge of structuring the data and the tables for my database. Okay. Now, if we go back to Safari, you can see that they have this example. So let's go ahead and copy this and paste it here. And they are telling us as well that we need to run the Prisma migrate dep and then Prisma latest generate. These commands will generate the types and the queries and everything we need for this schema, right? To handle this schema in our application. Okay, so this is the example, but let me, like we made this smaller. This is the example that they give us, right? They are giving us, basically passing this React Native configuration specific for React Native. Then we are also going to be using a local database. Like I was mentioning before, this is going to be just local for now, which means we'll have a database that will be generated by Prisma. And this database will live inside our project and inside our application. But it's very important to know that each user will have a database, a different database, right? A different copy of this database in their device. This database will be personal in this case, okay? So let's just leave this as it is. Basically, it is pointing to a roots, to the root folder in here, to the app.db, but we don't have an app.db yet, okay? But that's fine because Prisma will generate this database once we run the command. Now let's just worry about the data that we need to handle for this application. Now we will have users, of course. This is one of the, I would say, main functionalities. And I'll just go ahead and paste my user in here, my user module. Now it's very simple. We only have an ID, name, email, notification, Notion files, and this will be an array of Notion files. We don't have this yet, that's why it's red. Then we also have the created at and updated at. Now keep in mind that we are providing default values for the created at and the email. If we don't have any email, we will have just an empty string, but it is required to have an ID and a name. Okay, now let's create a Notion file. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and copy the module that I already have and we'll explain everything to you. So the functionality of Notion, it's very simple yet very powerful. But let's understand how this will work. I will create a table in my database called Notion file, and each user will be able to have many Notion files. That's why we are creating this relation, adding an array of Notion files, which means a user can have many files. Okay. So if we go to the module in the Notion file, you can see that we will have an ID. This will be the default auto increment. Then a Notion file could have a cover photo, which will be a string, icon, which in this case will be the emoji, title, description, content, the type of the file. And then from here, you can actually extend this as you need or make some changes as you need. But the interesting part, I would say, would be the relationship between the file and the author, as you can see here. So the person who creates the file, we will create this relation by the field's author ID, which is this one. And then if we need in the future, if we need to know who created this file, we can use this relation to quickly see who created this file. Okay. And we will have the relation pointing to a user. Now the second part would be the parent, the ability to have parent file and the ability to have children files or sub files, as you can see here. This is the name of this property. Now, this is a very interesting one because we're going to be using like a tree that will have nodes, and each node will be a Notion file, and each Notion file can be pointing to a many Notion files or just one Notion file or none. So in this case, we call these sub files, okay? And this will be an array of the same property or the same data structure, which is a Notion file. So what I'm doing here is just saying each file can contain files inside this file. This is the recursiveness, and this is very simple. Just in one line of code, we're doing this, and we're defining this relation as file hierarchy. Then we can have parent file, but this is interesting. We can only have one parent. Each file can have one parent, and this is easy to see on the example. For example, let's see the list of features. All of these features or files that live inside this list of features in the device, in this list of features file, this is at the end of the day a file, right? That contains this array of files. And each one of these, it's pointing to just one parent file, which is the list of features. And if I go to the features, you can see that we can see the inner files, which are many files, okay? But this will have only one parent file if we have a parent file. Otherwise, this will be a root folder. This will be a root Notion file. And the root Notion file will live in my list in here, okay? This is why I named this one root, because this one does not have a parent file. I know that this is a root file, okay? And because these two have a parent, which is root, I know that these two are children's, okay? Okay, and this is how we can do the relationship. This will be just one, and this is optional, as you can see here, or nullable to allow top level files, as you can see there. And if I scroll right, you can see that the relation for the parent file, I'm defining some rules in here. Apart from the file hierarchy, I'm saying that the fields are going to be the parent file ID, but in the case that we delete the parent, I want to delete all the children that were inside this file. So for example, if I go ahead and delete this root file, sorry, that will delete everything inside this, okay? And that's gone. Okay, we're defining the references, which is the ID. And yeah, also if we delete a user, we will delete all the Notion files created by the user, okay? On delete cascade, maybe you want to do this in a different manner, but I think this is a good way to handle the deletion, because we don't want to keep data that, no one will see anymore and things like that. So yeah, we also have the order. This is a very cool one, default to 0, but the order, guys, this will be basically the index in which we are sorting by when we drag and drop in the list of item, we are basically changing the index in the list, and we are storing this index in the order field for each Notion file. This is how we can know how to sort these files and where to look for the order in the file as well. We also have the standard created at and updated at, defaulting to now or the creation time. And the updated at will be as well updated every time we update this structure. And this will be handled by Prisma, so we don't need to think about it. We just need to pass these updated ats. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Just these two models will allow us to have this really powerful functionality in our application. So once we have this schema, let's go ahead and run the command that we saw in here, Prisma migrate. So let's go ahead and go back. paste it here. We can, they can use the latest or just say Prisma, migrate dep. Let's hit enter. This will migrate my schema, and it is asking me to install the following. So I will say yes and hit enter. Let's wait a second or two. Okay, and I got this error. The reason for that is because I didn't save the schema file. Okay, I just saved it. Let's go ahead and run the command again. And now it's working. It is actually asking me the name of the new migration. Now, migration, guys, if you're not familiar with Prisma, basically it's going to create the fields in my database that, as you can see here, app.db. It's my database, and this is going to be an SQLite database. So if I scroll up in here, we are basically defining this URL for the database, and the provider is going to be SQLite, as you can see here. Now, right now, we are just doing this with SQLite, but of course you can do this with any database, I would say. But SQLite allows us to do it locally. But if you have a server with a database deployed, you can just pass the URL in here, and this will, and then once we have access to the sync engine, this will work locally as well in the server. Okay, cool. So as you can see, this generated my DB. I didn't have a DB, now I have one with my schema and tables. And if I go ahead and click on this database, you can see that this will have the tables in here. Let me see. Okay, so I think this is not finished migrating. So let me provide a name for this migration. I just say init and hit enter. And this will do some things in here. So let's go ahead and refresh. And now I have the tables. Okay, so let me close the, well, let's actually just run the next command. Let's go here and generate. This generate basically will create the types for my tables and things like that. So let's go ahead and run this command. And yes, hit enter. All right, and that's it. Now, if I use this client, I will have types for my tables, which is really nice. Okay, and we will see the benefits in the upcoming minutes that we work on this. But for now, let's just explore a little bit what we have inside this database, which is basically two tables, the Notion file and the user. Now, a thing to know, guys, is that we don't have any data in here. And also this database that we have in here, this won't be the same database that we will be running in the device. Like I was mentioning before, the database, a new database will be created in the device once we compile basically this application in the device. Okay, so each user will have a different database, and if you start inserting data into this app.db file, you won't be able to see this data in the simulator, because when we compile this application into the simulator, we will create a copy of the database, but it won't be the same one that we have in here. Okay, just keep that in mind. But this is good for, checking the fields that you're handling and, the keys, etc. Okay, so let's just close this. Let's close the Prisma schema and let's run this in my simulator finally. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do, well, actually, before I run this into the simulator, let's just go to the Safari. And let's check out the README of the, Prisma React Native. Basically, this package contains an extension for Prisma Client, and we need to create this configuration and then export this extended client so that we can use the hooks. And the hooks will look something like this. For example, users equal to, and then we can use this client to access the tables like user and Notion file, and then use these hooks to create items or to find items. Okay, So as you can see, we also have an example to create and the hooks that we can use. Okay, so let's do this configuration. Let's go back to the code. Before we run the application, let's do that. Okay, so I will create a new file in the root, and this file will be named mydv module.ts. We're using TypeScript, and let me just copy paste the configuration. Okay, so this is the configuration. Basically, I copy paste the same thing that they provide in the documentation here. We need to import from Prisma client, reactive hooks extension, and then initialize this from the Prisma client class. Okay, let's go back. This is what we're doing here. But now we can actually use the log part in here to emit the output of the Prisma database, for example, queries, info, warnings, and error. Okay, so you can change this as you like. Then I'm also exporting the extended client, which is basically using the base client that we have here and generating this configuration to apply pending migrations before we run the database. Okay, so this will apply the configuration, and I think this is all we need. Let's go back to the docs quickly. Now the only thing we need to do is just use this module to use this this extended client. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so before actually we need to run this initialize dv function, and we need to do this in the entry point of this application. So let's go to the layouts app. This will be the entry point. Remember that we're using Expo Router, so the layout will be the entry file. And by the way, if you are not familiar with Expo Router, I have a video in my YouTube channel. I will leave it here if you want to learn more about Expo Router. But for now, I will assume that you already know the basics of Expo Router. So the layout will be the entry point. And in here, we have actually a use effect for loading the splash screen. What I'll do is just create a new use effect in here. So let's create this use effect, and this use effect will run my initializeDB function that I have here. So we can say, actually, we need to await. This is an async function. So I'll create a new setup function in here using an async arrow function. Okay. And then we can have even a try catch. And if we have an error, I want to say console log error. Okay. And then inside the try, I want to have an await and then initialize db. Okay. And I'm importing this. Let me show you from my module. Okay. So my db module. And finally, we need to call the setup. Okay, cool. Now, before we actually run this initializeDB, we need to prevent rendering anything, right? So let's go ahead and create a new variable here using useState. I'll call this one it's loading and set is loading equal to useState. Okay, and this will be true by default. Okay, cool. So I'll close this file now. We are using this initializeDB basically here. So I'll close this one. Now we will use this to validate that we have loaded the database or initialize the DB. So basically, once we finish this, I will set is loading equal to false. That's all, because this is true at the beginning. And then we can prevent rendering if we are still loading. So if loaded and or is not loading, then we are going to return null. If we have finished loading the database, then we will enter the application. Okay, this is the entry point. So let's hit save. Let's run this to see if this works. I'll say yarn iOS. This will start building the application for my simulator here. Okay, this will take a moment. Alrighty guys, so the application is ready. I'll go ahead and press open. This is bundling. Let's wait a little bit. Hopefully nothing will break. Okay, and as you can see here, let me open the Explorer so that we can see Divi was initialized, and this console log is coming from my Divi module. Let me go down here, and I added this console log so that we know that everything went well. And because we're able to see the application here, it means that we are not loading anymore and we pass this if statement. All right, so let's go to the index inside the tabs, which is going to be, this screen that we're seeing here. Let's close the terminal for now, or maybe we can just leave it open a little bit. All right, so the first thing that I want to do is change this for the theme view that comes with the template and delete everything inside this file. Okay, and oops, inside this theme view, I want to have a theme text. Now these components, as you can see, they come already with the template, so I'll go ahead and use them. They are very handy. So let's delete things that we don't need for now. And let's just write something like hello world, Notion, hit save. All right, and we're able to see this text at the very top. Cool. So I'll just have a style down here called container, and it will have a flex of 1, and I'll add this in here. Okay, and hit save. Cool. So let me also add a save area view from React Native. And inside I will have my text so that we can see my text on the top left of the device, which means this is working great. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that we don't have any data in the database yet, okay? So if we have, if you have some sort of authentication, this would be a good time to, maybe authenticate the user or somehow get the information of the user and then create a new user in the database. Now, because I want to keep this video simple, I will create a hard-coded user for me so that I can start working on this application. In this case, I will only have one user. Okay, so let's go ahead and create this user. To create a user, we need a function. So I'll create this create user function. This will be an arrow function, and I will be using my extended client for Prisma. Okay, from Prisma. So let's call this new user. This will be the data that I'm going to be saving. First thing, name, Beto, and then I provide an email. In this case, can be beto@expo.dev. Okay, this is the data that I will save. And also, if you don't remember what kind of data you are handling, you can always go to the schema and just check the user module. We have an ID, name, email. Now, if I don't provide an email, I will assign a default, but I'm just providing an email so that I have an email as a user. If we want to create a profile screen, we can, just grab this email and the name and display it. If we don't, we don't need to provide the ID. This will be auto-generated and auto-incremented by Prisma. So yeah, this is all the data we need. Once we have this data, we can go ahead and use the extended client from my Divi module. Okay, remember that we are exporting this from here, and we can use this very easily by specifying the table, in this case user, and then I'll use the create method, and this will take data, and the data will be the new user. Okay, now let's create a button down here. I'll use a regular button from React Native, and I'll create a user, and on press, I will create user. Okay, so let's hit save. Maybe, we can have a console log here that will let me know that, success, that we created a user. So I'll press create user. And as you can see in the terminal, I have a user now in my database. because this went successfully. So let's go ahead and list the users, okay? So let's say const user, I will, just grab the user that I created. So we can use the extended client as well. I'll access the user module and then use my first hook, find first hook, okay? Now, because I already know that we only have a user and I already know that we have an auto increment in the ID, that means that the only user we have is going to have the ID number 1. So I'll say where ID equal to 1. Okay. Now from here, I'll just put the user in the console. So I'll say console log user and hit save. All right, let's check out the console. Okay, and here we have the user. We can see the created at, the email, the ID, which is 1, the name, and the updated at. So as you may imagine by now, let's go back again to the schema. We have these two by default. We provided these two, and then the ID is going to be auto-generated and it's going to be auto-incremented. Okay, and if I create a new user, it will have ID 2. Cool. Now let's use this user from now on to handle our logic and our application. So I'll go ahead and delete this console log. And then I won't be using this create user anymore because I already have a user with ID 1. But just keep in mind that if you have authentication, once you authenticate the user for the first time, you need to create a new user in your user table. And from there, authenticate, grab the ID of the user, get the user, and from there, get the Notion files of the user, and so on and so forth. Cool. Alrighty, so I guess we can start working on the Notion list, right? In the list, in the draggable list, and we can start working as well on the create Notion screen. So let's do one thing. Let's create one Notion file for now so that we can list these Notion files, okay? So let's do something similar that we are doing in here to create a user. We can basically copy this and paste it down here. This is going to be, just to have some dummy data. So I'll call this one create Notion. And then we need to specify the data of the Notion. Now, a cool thing, guys, because we're using the Prisma client, is that we're going to have types for free. So if I say Notion file from the Prisma client, as you can see here, you can see that somehow I have this type for my Notion file that is typing everything, all the fields that this file contains for free. And I can use this Notion file type, okay? Now, of course, TypeScript is going to yell at me. So if I just show my autocomplete, I can, specify some things like the author ID, which is going to be 1. It's the only author we have. Then we can specify the title. Let's say, test Notion, okay, comma, and then we can have like the content example. What else? We can have a cover photo. I don't want one description icon. It's going to be an emoji. So let's go ahead and use the rockets. What else? We need an ID, but that is going to be auto-generated. We need the order. That is going to be default to 0, I think. Parent file ID. This will be the root file, so we don't need a parent. Type. That is going to be default, I think. Let's go ahead and check out quickly the schema. Okay. Yeah, so this won't be default. Okay, so let's do one thing. Add description and cover photo. And that will be just empty strings like that. Then we also need the type, default. Of course, you can have types, and then based on the types, you can fetch the files. And yeah, I think that's all we need. Let's go ahead and delete the type now that I have this data. And now from here, I'll use the extended client, but instead we're going to say Notion file dot create, passing the new Notion. Okay, and hit save. Success. Yeah, so let's create a Notion file. I'll duplicate this button and I'll say create Notion, calling create Notion. Let's click. Okay, we have the success down here, as you can see. Cool. Now let's delete this. Well, let's just keep it there for now. I think I need to create one more. I'll press this again, by the way. So let's clear the terminal, press. Okay. Now let's list the notions by saying const notions equal to extended client notion file, use find many, and I think this will return everything we need. So if I hit save and put the notions in the console, you can see that we have one with my author ID, the content is example, and yeah, so it's working fine. Now let's console log just the length of this array. Okay, so we have 2. Okay, this is working fine. Let's go ahead and delete this. Now that we have these notions, we can actually start working on the list of notions and the draggable items. So let's go ahead and delete this, and let's delete this create notion as well. This was just for generating dummy data. But I will leave the user and the create user function. I think we can use it later, especially if you want to, delete everything and start from 0. You will need to create a new user every time. All right, so let's create a new component. I'll create a new file, and I'll call this one draggable notion list.tsx. Okay, so this draggable notion list, let me copy the name. Let's export default function, draggable notion list. This will be a component that will return the draggable flat list. And if you remember, we have a draggable flat list. We should be able to see this. Let me see if I can. Yeah, so 1 second. What am I doing here? Oh, okay. I'll just delete this button. I don't need it anymore. Delete this as well. Okay. Yeah, so this draggable flat list will come from the library that we installed at the beginning of this video. So let's use here React. Once again, I call this one draggable flat list. This will come from React Native draggable flat list. So this draggable flat list requires some data. That's why it's yelling at me, and this will be an array of items. So let's go ahead and fetch the files, right? So we're going to be using the Prisma client as well. So let's do that. Files equal to extended client from my Divi module. And then from the Notion file, let's use the find many. Okay, cool. Now, a couple things to keep in mind here is that if we use this use find many, this will bring all the files, okay? Even the children files. So if we only want the files that don't have a parent, we can have some where in here. So I can say where parent file is null. Okay, cool. And then we can also order these items. So after the where, I can say order by, and then say order. Order is a property, and I'll say ascending. And yeah, so let's pass these files in here. Okay, that's my file. Now this draggable flat list also needs to render an item, and this render item is going to be a component that needs to satisfy the types of this draggable flat list. Okay, so give me 1 second. Before I create this component, I will add a styling here, and let's give it a flex of 1. Then we also need to provide a function when the drag ends. So when the drag ends, this will actually provide the data. Okay, and we need to handle this somehow, right? So I'll just create an empty function for now. But when the drag ends, what we need to do is actually get this index and update our order of the items. Okay. Then we also need a key extractor, very similar to the flat list. So from the key extractor, this will get me the item, and I can use the item ID to string. This is a number, so we need to pass this to be a string. We can be sure that each item is going to have a unique ID. So yeah, we should be good with the ID. Then we need the render item, like I was mentioning before. So we need to create this item. And I think that's all we need for now. So let's go ahead and create this item. And then we can also have this onDragEnd function in here. So I'll just go ahead and create this function up here and say cons handle drag end. And this is going to be an R function. Okay. And this will take, the data. And this data will be actually of type Notion file. So let's go ahead and use this file from Prisma. This will be actually the array. So this data will be the array of files, but with a new order, right? Once the drag ends, the items will have a new order, and based on this data, we need to sort the items. So we need to call this function in here by saying handle drag end and then pass the data. Cool. So in here, to do, we need to sort files. We need to update order in DV, and that's it. Okay, now let's create this render item. So for this item, I will have to create a new item. Let me close the terminal for now. Let's go to the components, create a new file, and this will be a draggable Notion list item.tsx. Okay, so let me copy the name of this and export default function. Okay, and this will return a file item, right? Now this is going to be fun. Let's create a component that will render the item. Okay, so for now, let's just create a text, and let's use a theme text from the components that came with this template. And for now, let's just let's actually define some properties that we're going to get for this component. So I'll just go ahead and type this as any for now. We're going to fix this in a moment, but this will get a function called drag. Then we will get if the item is active, which means if the user is dragging this specific item. And then we will get the item itself, which means the Notion file. Okay, so from here we can say item.title. Okay, so yeah, this is all we need for now. Let's save this. Let's go back to the draggable list, and let's use this draggable Notion list item. Okay, and hit save. Alrighty guys, so after we hit save, we are not able to see anything on the simulator. The reason for that, it's because if you remember, we're using this safe area view. So this safe area view does not have a style, a height, and we need to take this view. We need this view to take 100% of the view. So if I add this flex of 1, we should be able to see this list of items, as you can see here. And we should be able to start drag and dropping, as you can see. Now, the only thing, guys, is that we need to preserve the, so let me quickly, yeah, so we need to preserve the, handle the new, how can I say this, handle the new position once we finish dragging these items. So if I render, for example, if I go to the item file and render the item.id, for example, then just a space in here, and let's reload. Okay, so if I drag the first one at the second position, you'll notice that that is not being saved. We are, losing the new order. So we need to fix that. And the way we can fix that is by handling the drag end. Okay, so the drag end of this item will live in the list. Okay, so in the list, I will have this drag end. And what I want to do in here, it's basically sort these files with the new index, right? Or with the new order position. So the way I'll do that is just by using my base client. So let's delete these comments. And I'll say const updates data.map. So I'll start by iterating over each item with the new sorted index. Okay, so let's use the file and then let's grab the index, which will be the new order of the items. Okay, and from here I'll say return base client. I'll use my base client with the Notion file. I'll run an update for each and every one of these items, where then I need to pass the ID of the file, where the ID is the file ID, and the data that I want to update is going to be just the order, replacing it by the index. Okay, so the new index will be the order, and if you remember, we are ordering this by order ascending. So once I update this, we should be able to see the order or preserve the order on the database. Okay, now in here, I'll say await base client, and then, so right now, this is generating an array of updates basically, and then we can use the base client transaction and pass the array of updates. Okay, transactions allows the running of a sequence of read and write operations that are guaranteed to either succeed or fail as a whole. Okay, so if I pass the update, that means let me make this actually an async function. That means that we are going to update every single file with a new sorted index, and then let's say await. Once we create the transaction, we need to say extended client dot refresh subscriptions. This will basically update the UI. Okay, so let's hit save. Now remember that we are handling the drag in this item, so let's do that on handle. Okay, so let's try again. Let's move the 2 at the first position and let's go down. Okay, so this is working fine. Now let me actually come here and add a type of header or title, sorry, and reload. Let me see if I can reload this app. Okay, now I want you guys to notice that we have this flickery effect every time that I finish dragging. The reason for that, it's because I believe we are re-rendering somehow when we are doing this handle drag end and handle the updates and everything. We are triggering an extra update of the UI, and the dragging and sorting looks bad. So my workaround for this was to use a use effect, and I'll show you how I did it. Basically, stored the sorted files using use state. So set sorted files equal to use state, and this will be an array, and the generic here will be a Notion file list. Okay, so these sorted files basically will have this state so that we don't see this flickering or jumpiness when we finish sorting these items. So on the handle drag end, what I want to do is set the sorted files, set sorted files to the new data. This will update everything at once, and we won't see the jump of the items. And also we need to set these sorted files at the beginning. So I'll use a use effect. Okay, and then as soon as we mount this component, I'll say set sorted files equal to the files that we are grabbing from Prisma. And then I want to run this every time that the files change. So I'll add this to the array of dependencies. And then let's use these sorted files in the list. Let's paste it here and hit save. And let me reload just to make sure that this is working fine. Let's go ahead and drag and drop. And you can see that we don't see any jump. So this fixes this issue. And yeah, so I'm not super happy with this solution, but it's working fine. And it's not very dirty, right? So this is working great. And yeah, so that's all we need for now, I think. Now let's go ahead and keep working on the draggable Notion item. Let's go here. And this item needs to, needs to be very special because this item can contain more items inside of it, right? And also this item can contain a parent component, right? Or it can be a child of an item, okay? Basically, this item will be recursive. And what I'm saying is that this item, at the end of the day, could be a list of items, and each of those items can have a list of items inside of it, okay? So we need to handle this in a better way, not just rendering this touchable opacity, but render an abstraction that can handle the, the drag and drop, and also can handle the expandable of the items and show the items, okay? So for that, I will create a component, and I'll create this component down here. I'll start by declaring some types, okay? Well, let's create this item. I won't export this item because I will only use this component inside this file. So I'll name this one Notion file item, okay? And this Notion file item will take all the properties that we are passing basically in here, and also the Notion file, and will handle the render of this item, okay? So this will be like the very single item that can expand, and also delete items to show more items inside of it. So let's let's handle the state of this item in here. But first of all, I need to declare some properties. So I'll create an interface that we need to pass to this component. So I call this props. Okay. So the first property is going to be drag is active, and then we're going to need as well some other properties. So I'll just go ahead and copy this. The first one is going to be the drag function, which is going to be a void function. Then we have the active, which is a Boolean. Now I'll mark this as optional, the drag. And then item will be, instead of item, I'll name this one Notion file. I think it's a better name. And then we say that this is of type Notion file. Then is active is there. Okay. Now we're going to have icons, and these icons are going to be changing color depending on the theme. So I'll pass as well the icon color for this item. And this is going to be of type string. It's just a color. And that's all. So I'll say that this component is going to get this Notion file item props. And then we can destructure these options in here just by using the autocompletes. Okay, get him there. Cool. All right, so let's return. This will return a view, simple view from React Native. So we can create this view. Now this component will be in charge of handling the open and close state of this expandable. So let's create an isOpen and set isOpen using state. Okay. And this will be a Boolean. So at the beginning, it will be false. Okay, cool. Now let's go down here and start working on this view. I'll create a touchable opacity. But basically, I think I can just copy this and use it down here. Okay. And this touchable opacity, instead of having this item, we'll have the Notion file .title. Cool. So this touchable opacity will have the disable when it's active, the on long press, which is the drag function that we're passing. Then I will also pass a active opacity, which I'll set to 0.8. This is a property from the touchable opacity. And then I will create a style for this. So I'll use some styling from down here. So I'll say styles equal to style sheets from React Native dot create. And the first one is going to be a heading. Okay. So this heading, I'm going to add it to this touchable opacity by saying styles dot heading and hit save. Okay. So this is how it looks. This heading basically is going to be like the container of this touchable opacity. And inside this touchable opacity, I will have icons and then the title. So let's create a view in here. This will contain the icon for expanding, right? So I'll use a pressable for this from React Native. And inside this pressable, I have an iron icons from the icons, and then I'll pass the name. And the name will depend on if it's open or not. Okay, so I'll use a chevron down, and I'll use a chevron forward outline if it's closed. Okay, then we need to specify a size. So I'll say size of 18. Then I need to pass a style as well, and just need a margin right of 12, and finally pass a color. Okay, so let's hit save and let's actually start using this component in the Notion list. So let's go down here. Sorry, let's go up here, my bad. And let's scroll up. And for now, let's render the Notion item. Okay, let's hit save, reload. Okay. Yeah, so this is a component. My bad. And we need to pass the properties. So let's pass the drag. Let's pass the is active. And icon color, let's say gray for now. And file would be the item. Okay, let's hit save. Let's reload the app, and now we're able to see it. Okay, so this is how it looks so far. Cool. So let's go down here and let's keep working on this Notion file. Okay, so we have this icon. Then I also want to have a a text that will contain the title after this pressable. So let's put this in here, but the type of this is going to change to be default semi-bold. And then I want to add as well the Notion file.icon and some space. Okay, so that's working. That's looking fine. Now I need to put this from left to right. So I'll go ahead and give it a height of 40 here and a border width of 1. Okay, then let's say flex direction row, hit save. And I think I need to reload for this to work. Oh, okay, so it's not working. Let me align items to the center. Okay, and then justify content space between, hit save. Got it. So yeah, actually I need this in this view, right? So what I'll do is just add a flex direction row in here and then align items to the center. Okay, so that looks better. And that's all I need for now in here. Now this is actually the container for the item, and that's how it looks. So I'll just go ahead and delete the border width. I'll just add a padding horizontal of 12. Okay, and I think that looks better. Let me quickly go to the index and I'll just delete the text and leave these items like that. Okay, so they're looking great, simple, clean. So what I'll do now is just copy this view and create a new container down here. And inside of this view, I will have a new pressable. So I can just copy this pressable. And this pressable will be for the ellipses or the 3 dots. So let's go ahead and change the name of this. I'll use the ellipse horizontal, same color, but we won't have a margin. Okay, and that's how it looks. It's inside a pressable, so keep that in mind. And then we also need a new icon, so I'll create a new icon in here, and this icon will be for the ad. Okay, and that's how it looks. Cool. Now we need to just add some space between these two items. So I'll add a gap of 6 and hit save. Okay, and there we go. Now for the ad, I actually will be changing this to be 22. Let's hit save because that plus sign, it's a bit small. So yeah. Okay. So what I want to do is when we press this, chevron with this press ball, so I'll add a press on press set is open equal to whatever we had before. So I'll use the previous value here and set based on the previous value, but the negation. Okay, so this will be toggling the set is open. And then whenever we toggle this open down here after this touchable opacity, I will have this is open. And if we are open, I want to show a view from React Native. And inside this, I want to show the list of items, right? So this is very important, guys. If we have items inside this item, we want to show a list of these items. Okay, so we need to create this component, create inner Notion list item. Okay, this is a to do. We will be back. I'll just render null if we don't have anything. So this is an interesting point. So if we come here, you can see that we are expanding and this is working fine. So let's create a component that will render a list of these items down here. So let's go before this component in here and let's create a new component, inner Notion list item. Okay, this component will get some properties. So let's define these properties with an interface in here. So I'll say props. Now the only thing that I'll be passing to this is going to be the parent ID, which is a number or undefined if this is a root. Okay, this inner notion list will use this parent ID. Let me type this with the inner notion props, and we will use this parent ID to basically get the children's based on the parent ID. Okay, so const child's equal to extended client, and I'll use the notion file dot use find many, and now we need to pass a condition in here where parent file equal to parent ID. Okay, cool. So yep, parent file ID actually. Okay, this will get me an array, and then I can validate if child dot length equals 0. Oops. Equals 0. I want to return a theme text that says no pages inside. Okay, you see what I'm doing? Basically, I'll be passing the ID of the current file to this component, and then I'll use this ID to find all the files that the parent file ID is the current file ID. Once I have these children, I will render them if the length is greater than 0. Okay, so right now, if I just leave this as it is, we will see this text. Then I'll just add a style in here that says color equal gray. And then down here, I will have my return. Okay, and this return will be a view from React Native. And then from here, we can iterate over the childs, and I'll iterate over each Notion file, which is of type Notion file. And we will render a Notion file item each time, passing all the properties we need. First of all, we need a key. So let's say Notion file.id, and then icon color. The icon color, so the icon color we need to calculate based on the theme. And to do that, we need to get the theme. So I'll get the theme from the use color scheme from React Native. Okay. And if we don't have anything, I'll just use light. And then let's say const icon color equal to theme. If this is light, then I want to use my colors, and we have these colors constants that come with the template. Otherwise, I'll use dark. So I'll say colors.dark.icon and hit save. Okay, so let me pass this in here. Icon color, and then finally I also need the Notion file. So I'll pass the Notion file. Okay. Okay, so this is yelling at me. Is active, is missing. Okay, so let me go down here and mark is active as optional and hit save. Okay, so if we go ahead and open this, well, let me actually reload. Okay, so, oh yeah, I'm not using this inner Notion list item. So the inner Notion list item will live inside this component. And we need to pass the parent ID, which would be this file. So what's the name of the property? Notion file.id, and hit save. Okay, let's see. And we're able to see no pages inside, which means this is working great. Yeah, this is working fine. And if we had files inside, we will be rendering the same component. Okay, so pretty nice. Now, let's go ahead and add a style for this content. So I'll say style, styles.content, and let's go down here and create this content. And for this, I'll just say margin left of 24. Now this margin left of 24 will be applied to each item, and we will be basically adding 24 on each level. So if a children has more children's and so on and so forth, we will be adding 24 and 24 and 24. Okay, cool. So that's working fine. I think this is pretty clean. This is pretty cool. Now let's use the these buttons that are not doing anything so far. So for the ellipsis horizontal, I'll be using my sheet with options. So let's go up here in this Notion file item. Okay, and let's use the use action sheets. Use action. Okay, so I think I need to come up here. Action sheets. Okay, and from this, from here, I will import my use action sheet hook. Okay, let's go back to my component inside the Notion file down here. I'll say const equal to use action sheet. This will be to show the actions that we can perform on each item. So from here we can add, we can get the show action sheet with options. Okay, and then I'll create an onPress, onPress function. This is going to be an arrow function, and we will be passing the ID, which is type number, as parameter to this function. Then we need to define the options that we want to show. So the options are going to be an array of strings. The first one is going to be delete, and the second one will be cancel. Okay. Then destructive button index would be at position 0, which is delete. That means this will be red. And then const cancel button index would be at position 1, of course. This is the delete 0, cancel position 1. Okay. So if I scroll down, then we can show action with options. Then we need to pass the options. We need to pass the cancel index, and we need to pass the destructive button index. So let me copy the name and paste it here because I had a typo there. Okay, then cancel button index, this is fine. Finally, the second option for this would be the function that will be handling the case of the, depending on what the user is going to select. So we can get the selected index from here, which is going to be of type number or undefined actually. So once we have this, we can create a switch case based on the selected index. And let's start handling the case of destructive button index. In this case, what I want to do is use my extended client Notion file and use the deletes. The delete where, and we need to say where the ID is equal to the ID that we are passing here. Okay, and then we can break from here. Okay, so let's create another case for the cancel button index. Of course, actually, we don't need to do anything here, but if you want, you can do something in here. So I'll just say cancel and hit save. Now I'll just minimize this function because it's very large. Copy the name and go to my pressable and say onPress, and then we need to pass the ID. So I'll grab this from the Notion file.it. Okay, cool. So if I go here and press these 3 dots, let me actually reload. All right, so now before we can actually use this functionality, we need to go to the layouts, and we need to wrap this into the action sheet provider. So let's wrap this like that. And let's go back to the item in here. Let's try to press. Okay, and now this is working. So I can delete items by ID. Okay, so before I do that, I'll just leave this as it is for now because we only have these two items. Okay, cool. All right, now before we actually leave this file, guys, I just want to mention something very important, and that is this Notion file item. When we are showing the inner list for each item or file, we won't be handling the dragging inside the list, right? We just want actually to handle the drag in the root elements that are outside, right? Outside of these items. So that means that's why we set this drag property to be optional. And instead of, if the user tries to drag an item that is inside of these, if they try to drag, nothing will happen because we are not passing any drag inside here. Okay, we could if we want to, but I think that will complicate a lot the logic. And actually, the real Notion application does not has this feature. Okay, so yeah, so to keep that in mind, having this property like that, we will be good to go. So just before we leave this component, I just want to mention, guys, that what we're doing here is just rendering this Notion file, but first we're checking the base case, which is if the array is empty, then we won't show anything, and otherwise we will show the same component without the dragging functionality. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this file, and let's actually start working on the creation of the items. All right, so before we start creating the create Notion screen, I want to modify a little bit the colors. So the first color that I want to modify is going to be the tint color. And these colors, guys, again, it comes with the template. So you should be able to see these colors if you're using the Expo template. The tint color, as you can see, is the color of the icons that we can see down here. And then I will also have a background secondary. So for dark mode, I will be using a white color, and for dark mode, I will be using, light, I will be using dark, and dark, I will be using white with 5 opacity. And you will be seeing this in a moment. And actually, I'll just increase this to a 10 because I think 0.5, it's very low. Okay, and everything else, I just leave it as it is. I'll just go ahead and close these files. Let's close everything. And let's go to the layout of the tabs. And in here, I will start modifying a little bit my layout. Okay, so the first thing is the index. We have a home, so that's fine for the icon. Then we have a screen for the Explorer. And in this case, I'll use this screen for the search. So I'll use the search icon. And let's create one more for the search outline when we are not focusing. And this is how it looks. Okay. Now I want to create a new tab for the new Notion. And this is going to be actually another important thing. We will create this new Notion screen as a tab, but then we also need access to this screen as a stack screen. So we will need to keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and create a new tab. To create a new tab, we can say new notion.tsx. Okay. And this new Notion screen will be in charge of creating new Notion files. So let's go ahead and just for now return export default function. I'll call this one new Notion screen. Okay, and return a, just an empty tag for now. Okay, let's go back here. And then we can create a new tab. So I'll duplicate this and paste it down here. Let's scroll a bit, and the name of this one would be new Notion. Okay, this is how it looks. Okay, so we don't need a title, and the top bar icon would be, in this case, a pencil, and then I will be using the sharp one, and for the other option would be just the pencil, like that. Okay, and let's hit save, and there we have it. So as simple as that. Now I want to set some properties for this screen before we go. The first one is going to be the header shown equal to true, because we need to have some items in this screen. Let's go to this screen. Okay, so that's a header. Then I need to set the header title to be just an empty string, because I don't want anything in there. And finally, I want the header style, and I'll use the shadow color as transparent. Okay, this will eliminate the line of this header. Okay, now one important thing here, guys, it's going to be the option called on mount on blur. Okay, and I need to set this one to be true. And this is important because I'm gonna be using the same screen for each file. Okay, what I'm saying here is that when I create a new Notion, I will set a title, I will set a content for the project, for the file. And also when I want to view an existing Notion file, I will be using the same new Notion screen, but I will be passing the title and the content as default values for the inputs. And when the user presses done, what I'll do is just an update instead of a create of the new file. Okay, so what I'm saying here is that if the user goes and views the first file and then goes back and clicks on the next file, if we don't unmount the screen, we will be showing the previous state, because React Native navigation, it's going to keep the screen cache. Okay, so basically what we are doing is deleting the cache every time that we stop focusing this screen, or every time that we close this screen or go away from this screen, which is what we want in this case. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit save, and let's go to the new Notion screen. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do in this screen is declare some constants that I'm going to be using. So let me just copy paste in here, and let me show you what this is. Basically, I have an array of icons which are just emojis. So I'll just go ahead and minimize this. Each item is going to be an emoji, and I'm going to be grabbing one of those every time we come to this screen. Okay, then I also have this input accessory view ID. I will explain this in a moment, but basically this is just an identifier for the view that we will have above the keyboard with the tools and emojis that we can use, and we need a string as an ID. And then we also have this example content. This will be Markdown that we'll be using for providing examples of the file and the things that you can do with Markdown as an example for the users. Okay, so let's go ahead and minimize this. These are just constants that we're gonna be using, and then I will create, like I was mentioning before, I will be grabbing one of these each time that we come to this screen randomly. So let's create a random icon function, random icon, and this will be an arrow function that will return default icons. At position, I want to grab a position between 0 and the length of this array. So let's use the math.floor and then math.random. And I want a number between 0 and the length of default icons. So let's use the length. And yeah, this is my function that will be returning a random icon So we can use them as default icons when we are creating a new file. Okay, cool. Now we're going to be using as well the theme here, use color scheme from React Native. And by the way, remember guys that these items that we created are compatible with dark mode, which is great, and they look fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the new Notion screen. Actually, one thing that I want to do is go to the tabs and tab title, show label equal to false. Okay, so we don't want to show the labels down here, so we can set this property in here. Okay, let's close these. Let's go back. We're gonna be using the theme. And one important thing, very important thing, guys, is I was mentioning before, we are gonna be using the same screen so that we don't have a bunch of code, and this is going to prevent having the same code twice. I'm gonna be using the same screen to render creating a new file or viewing a new file. Okay. Another thing to keep in mind when we are creating a new Notion file is that we can create root files or we can create child files. Child files are going to have a parent ID. And all this, every time that we navigate to this new Notion screen, all this information, we're going to be grabbing it from the route parameters. Okay, so let's go ahead and say route params equal to use local search params. Okay, and this is a hook that we can use from Expo Router. Okay, and this hook allows me to type what kind of data we're going to be receiving here. So the first type of data, it's going to be the parent ID. And this is going to be optional, and this is going to be of type string. Okay. Now the second type of data that we could get in this screen as root param, it's going to be the viewing file. If we are viewing a file, and this is going to be of type string. Okay. So viewing file, it's actually going to be the complete file, the entire file that we're going to be passing in the routes. And we will learn how in a moment. Okay. Another thing that I'm going to be using in this component, it's going to be the router. So I'm going to be use router from Expo Router as well. Okay. Cool. All right. So the first thing that I want to check down here, it's going to be if we are actually viewing a file or not, right? And if we are viewing a file, I need to get the child files that this file contains. And also I need to get the parent file so that I can render the back button. Okay, so that's a lot of things that we need to do, but don't worry, it's not complex. So the first thing that I want to do is check if we are viewing a file. Okay, so if we are viewing a file, I will use this viewing file variable, and actually this will be of type Notion file. So let's go ahead and use this type. Okay, and I will be grabbing this from the route params view file. Okay, so I need to validate, right? Because this can be null or undefined. Okay, so the first thing that I'll do is say, if we have a viewing file, then, like I was mentioning before, I'm going to be passing this as a string, stringifying this file. So I need to parse this as a JavaScript object if I want to use it. So I'll say here's JSON parse method, and then pass from the route the viewing file. So I'll say viewing file. This is in the case that we have something, but if we don't have something, I'll just set this view file to be null. Okay, cool. If we pass the view file, then we are going to be storing it in this component. And if we have a viewing file, I also need to pass I also need to get the child files, right? So let's get the child files using the extended client from my DV module. and then Notion file dot use find many, because we could have many files inside this file. So I can say where parent file ID equal to the viewing file dot ID. Okay. And if we don't have a viewing file, I'll just default this to be -1 so that this will be null. Okay. Cool. I mean, this will be an empty array, I think, if we don't have anything in here. Okay. So let's say next I need to get the parent file. I have the children's. Now I need the parent. So the parent file is going to be using the extended client as well, and then use find unique. This is another hook that we can use to find a unique file. And I can say where the ID is equal to the viewing file dot parent file ID. Otherwise, -1. Okay, cool. So in this case, we're passing the parent file ID. In the other case, we're passing the ID of the current file to get the children and then to get the parent. Once we have the parent, we can just use the data. Cool. All right, so let's keep going. One more thing that I need in this component is going to be a reference of my input. The reason for why I need the reference of my input of the title is because as soon as I go to this screen, I want to focus the input. So to do that, we need to have a title ref. So let's go ahead and create this variable using React, use ref. Okay, so I'll import this, initialize this to be null, and then I'll specify that this is going to be of text input type. Okay, cool. Then let's start creating the variables using useState to store the title, the text or content of the file, and the icon. Okay, so let's say const title and set title useState from React. I forgot the equal to. Okay, now let's think a little bit about this. If we notice that we are viewing a file, I want to set this useState variable to the viewing file.title, right? So if we are viewing a file, I'll say viewing file.title. Otherwise, just initialize this to be an empty string. And basically, I want to do the same for the text or content. You can call it as content as well. I just call it text. And then we can say, if we have a content, then we use the content. And we will do the same thing for the icon. So set icon, and I'll use the icon in here. Okay. So basically what I'm doing is just setting a default value if we are not viewing. But if we are viewing, I'm setting as well the default value that the file that we're viewing. Okay. Now for the icon, instead of setting this to an empty string, I want to get a random icon. So let's use our function to get a random icon. Cool. So what's next? One more thing that I need to get for the styling in this view, it's going to be my background color. Okay. So the background color, I'm going to be using this background color for some components. So let's grab this from the colors in the constants and then position ourselves at the theme, which means at position dark or light, and then just grab the background color, and I'll just grab this as any. I'll do basically the same thing for the text color, and this is going to help me to style the inputs and the markdown and things like that. Okay, so let's use the text color in here. Text as any. Okay, cool. All right, this is how it looks. Cool. So like I was mentioning before, as soon as we come to this screen, I want to focus the input. So let's use a use effect from React. And every time that we change the theme, I want to run this use effect. and I want to check one thing, the title ref, and the title ref.current. If we have an input, then I want to say title ref.current.focus. Okay. Basically, what this use effect is doing is every time that we load this screen, I will be opening right away the keyword and focus the title, which is good. It's always a good user experience, I think. All right, so next, one thing that I want to do here is actually handle saving files. So I'll create a function and the name will be handle save notion file, which will be taking some properties. Won't be taking any properties. And I'll do this later. So I'll mark this as to do. Then what else we need to do? I think that's all. Now we only need to render the view. Okay, so let's go inside this empty tag. And the first thing that I want to do is use the stack from Expo Router and access the screen so that we can set some options. And actually, I leave this as pending for now. Let's go ahead and create a theme view using the components that came with this template. And I'll use a style of flex of 1 so that we take the entire screen. Okay, and now you notice, guys, because I am not showing the line. So if I go to the tabs layout, and if you remember, I set this tab bar show label equal to false. No, not this one. I set this shadow color to be transparent, but if I comment this, you may not notice, but the line is here. And I don't want that line, so I'll set this shadow to be transparent. That's why I put it. Okay. Now this looks very clean. It's just a white canvas where the user can start doing some stuff, right? So what I'll do here inside this new Notion, it's going to be create a scroll view from React Native. Okay. And this scroll view actually has a property called keyword should persist tabs, and I'll set this to be always. Okay. Now inside this scroll view, I will create a new theme view. Okay. And this theme view is going to be basically my container. So let's go ahead and call this from the styles dots. And actually I don't have any styles. So let's go down here and create some styles. So I'll say const styles equal to style sheet from React Native dot create container. And for this container, what I'll do is just add a padding for now of 10. Then just come here and say styles.container. All right. So inside this theme view, I will have some inputs. The first one. Okay, so let me first show the icon. I think this is the main thing. So I'll validate if we have an icon. If we have an icon, then I want to set a text. Now this text will come from React Native and it will just display the icon. So let's add a style for the icon. Font size will be 60 because I want the icon to be big. Then I'll just add a margin bottom of 6. So let's hit save. Okay, and that's the icon. As you can see, it's a random icon. And hopefully if I go away and then come back, you can see that we are getting a random icon every time that we come back to the screen. Cool. All right, so this is working fine. Let's go ahead and use a text input from React Native. We are already importing this. Now this is the input that I want to focus every time that we come to this screen. So let's go ahead and bind the reference of the title. So I'll use the title ref. Okay. Now let me open my keyboard here so that you can see that this is working. And this looks very clean, right? Now let's use a placeholder. The placeholder will be untitled. Okay, and there we go. We caused a re-render there, as you can see, but the keyword as well was, was focused when we re-rendered the screen. Okay, now the value for this is going to be the title. So let's hit save. And then whenever we change the text, I want to say set title. Okay, and hit save. Cool. Of course, I need some style for this, so I'll have a font size of 32, font weight bold, and finally color, and I'll use the text color that we calculated before. The reason why I'm using this, it's because when we change this to be light mode, the text color needs to change as well of this input. So let's pass this text color that is going to be changing based on the theme. And then we can use this blur on submit property. And this will be used for the text field. So if true, the text field will blur when submitted. The default value is true. Okay, so if I press return, the keyword is closing. But if I set this to false and hit save, when I press return, nothing happens. Okay, and this is what I want. I don't want to hide this keyword. That's why I'm setting this property. Then we also have this really nice input accessory view ID. Now keep in mind that this is just available for iOS, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, so this is going to be just for iOS. As you can see here, if I scroll and do a zoom here, iOS components, this is just for iOS. So keep in mind that you will have to have a different solution for Android if you are using Android. But yeah, but for iOS, we can use this really nice input accessory view ID, which it's going to take the input accessory view ID that we created, in the constants that we declared before. Okay, so let's go down here. Cool. Now we need to have a component, right? The component is going to be like the tools that we want to show above the keyboard. So this is why we need this input accessory view. And then I also want this title to be multi-line. Okay, so let's hit save. Cool. So this is working fine. Now, if you notice, I'm kind of trapped in here because I cannot close the keyword or do anything. So let's go ahead and provide, a view that will allow me to dismiss the keyword. Okay, so for that, we're going to be creating the input accessory view. And this input accessory view is going to be after the scroll view. So let's say this input accessory view. Remember, guys, this is going to be just for iOS, so keep that in mind. And this accessory view is going to take a native ID, which is going to be the input accessory view ID. It's the same one that we attached to the title input. Okay, and then we also need a background color for this. So I'll say background color equal to background color, which is the background color we calculated before. Now inside this, I will have a view from React Native, and this view will contain a button. So let's just for now create a simple button from React Native and give it a title of AI, and this will basically only set the text. So set text, which is the content of the file, equal to the example content, which is a markdown. So yeah, let's keep that like that for now. And let's give it a style to this view. I will say flex direction row, and then gap of 7, because I will have maybe more buttons later. So if I multiply this, you can see that now we have these 2 buttons. Cool. So this is working fine. This is how the input accessory view works. So this is really cool. Okay, so let's continue. Now, I want to show my emojis in here. So what I'll do is just inside this view, by the way, I think I'll duplicate this view and wrap this in here. And for this view, I'll just remove this styling. And then inside this view, I will have the default icons, and then I will iterate over each one of those icons. And then we can render a pressable from React Native. I need to pass a key. So the key would be the icon. Every icon is different, so we can use the icon. And then inside I will have a theme text, which will render the icon. And also on press in here, I want to set the icon to be equal to the current icon that we are iterating. So if I hit save, you can see that we have the icons in there, and we are breaking this, we're breaking this style. So let's go ahead and add a style to this, and I call this one accessory view. Let's copy this and go down here and create a class for this accessory view. Okay, so flex direction row, hit save. There we go. Then align items to the center, justify content space between, hit save. Cool, it's looking fine. Padding horizontal of 7. Nice, we have a nice space in there. Height of 50. Cool. And border top width of 0.5. Hit save. All right. Now I want to change the color for the border color. So let's go ahead and go to this accessory view and add an array of styles. And the second one is going to change the border color based on the text color that we are calculating, plus 20 of opacity. And hit save. Now this looks very cool. And if I change to dark mode, still looks very nice. Now I had a scroll view here before, but when I press any of these icons with the scroll view wrapping these items, the keyword was dismissed and I couldn't fix that. So that's why I just leave this as it is. And that's why I will be slicing these from 0 to 6 so that we don't break the UI. And this is how it looks. Okay, so I only have 6 items and I can press around them. So let's just leave this as it is. Maybe you can fix this and let me know how you did it. But adding a scroll view here, maybe I can show you quickly. Scroll view. And then setting this as horizontal, hit save. This works, but when I press one of these icons, the keyword is dismissed and the icon is not getting pressed. So I couldn't fix that. That's why I just removed this scroll view, and this works as intended. Okay, anyways, that's the toolbar basically. But actually I'm not happy with this button. So for that, I actually want to create a custom component that is going to look really nice. So let's go ahead and create a new component called Notion button.tsx and export default function Notion button. Okay, so this is going to be a custom component that we're going to be creating. And let's start by defining some properties that we're going to need for this component. So let's create an interface. First one is going to be on press. So this is going to be a reusable component, and we need to have an on press function as property. So I also have a title for my component, icon name. This is going to be all optional. And the icon name is going to be basically component props from React, and this is going to take the type of the iron icons at position name. Okay, so this is going to be the name of the icon. This is going to be fully typed. Then I can say container style because I want to have this to be extendable. So I can say style prop from React Native, and this style is going to be a view style. So let's go ahead and import this type as well. All right, so now we can type this with the Notion props and then just destructure all we need in here. Okay, so we have the title and everything else. Now we're gonna need the theme as well because this button is going to support dark mode. So let's use the color scheme from React Native. Okay, and return a touchable opacity from React Native as well. Okay, so onPress, we just want to call the onPress function that we're gonna be passing as property, and I need a style for this. So I have an array of styles in here. The first one is going to be, my style of the container of this button. So for this style, I'll create some style sheet down here from React Native. This container will have a padding of 7, border radius of 40, flex direction row, align item center, and gap of 7. So let's go ahead and use this in here. And then I also need to extend this for the background color and border radius based on the state of the theme. So let's create an object in here and say background color. From the colors in the constants, add position theme dot background secondary. Okay, if you remember, we added this background secondary, and this is the color that I'm going to be using for this in light and dark mode. So we're using it here. Then border radius. Oops, I need a comma here. Border radius, it's going to be equal to, depending if we have a title, it's going to be 6. Otherwise, it's going to be 40. And finally, I want to pass in here the container style. If the user of this component is passing a custom style, I want to override these styles. Okay, cool. Nice. So these components will have, this button will have icons. So we can validate if we have an icon name, then I will render the ion icon. So I'll say ion icons, passing the name. That will be the icon name that we're getting as property. The size by default is going to be 16. And the color, it's going to be colors at position theme, either dark or light dot text. Okay, cool. Then title. If we have a title, I want to show a theme text, and this theme text is going to render the title of the button, but I want to have a dark color, white, and light color, black. Okay, so now I also need some styling here. So this will be a special style. I'll have a font size of 14. Line height is going to be 0, and font weight is going to be 600. Okay, so let's hit save. And by the way, this is a string. Okay, let's hit save. And I think this is all we need for my custom Notion button. So let's go down here and use my Notion button. Okay, let's remove this onPress and put in here. And also this title, let's put in here. Let's remove this button, remove this as well. And we can use the icon name property and use the sparkles. And yeah, so let's hit save. And that's my icon, my button, okay? And it looks beautiful. So if I switch to light and dark, this button is going to look amazing. And we can also use this component again without a title, but just with an icon. So I can say icon name, like images, for example, and also need to have an onPress, in this case, just an empty function. but it's going to be fully rounded, as you can see here, and looks very nice. Okay, so there you go, fully extendable. I can even pass a style in here if I want to for the container, but so far I think I'm good. And this is how it looks. Okay, all right, so now we also need to support dark mode, so let's go ahead and scroll up. We have this text input. So after the text input, I will have my markdown text input. And if you remember, we are using this from the Expensify library, React Native Live Markdown. We installed this at the beginning of the video. So make sure that you have this installed. So I will be using this to handle the dark mode things. Now, by the way, this reminds me that we need a style, right, for this markdown. So let's go ahead and go to the constants folder, and I will create a new file for markdown style.ts. Cool. So I'll just go ahead and copy paste the basically the styles that we can have for these inputs. And you can learn more about this if you just Google this library. They are letting us know how you can use this library. In this case, as you can see, we can specify the font family, and I created a markdown style using my colors for each one of these items. Okay, emojis, I'm giving them a size of 32, and everything else basically you can customize this. And I created another one for the dark mode, and I'm going to be using these two. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this markdown style. If you want to copy these guys, just go to the repo and extend this as you need and change this as you need as well. So let's go ahead and close this. Okay, now the way I'll use this is going to be in the markdown text input. So first of all, we need to specify a key. The reason why I'm specifying a key is because every time that we switch between light and dark mode, I want to re-render the markdown text input so that we can apply the style depending on the theme. Okay, so I'll use the theme as key, and then the value is going to be the text, and then the default value is going to be the text as well. Finally, placeholder is going to be tab here to continue. And on change text, we want to set the text. Set text. Okay. Markdown style. This is going to depend on the theme. So if the theme is equal to dark, I want to use a markdown style dark. Otherwise, just markdown style. Okay. Input accessory view. We're going to be using the same input accessory view that we had before. So let's use the same ID. This is going to be multi-line as well. And finally, I'll have a custom styling here just to specify the color of the text, passing the text color that we calculated before. And line height is going to be 28. That's all. So let's hit save. You can see that we have the tab here to continue. And if I use the AI button to set this, this code block and everything else, this will work fine. Cool. So that's the markdown text input. By the way, I'm missing a button to close the keyword. So let's go down here. And after this, I will create a new Notion button and with an icon name of arrow down. And whenever we press this, I'll be using the keyword from React Native.dismiss. So let's hit save, and here's my button. And if I press it, the keyword will be dismissed. Okay. Okay, dismissed. If I go to home screen, come back, it's automatically focused. We get a new icon, and we can, just go ahead and start editing. Cool. Amazing. So this is looking really nice. I'm super happy with this result so far. Now, one more thing that we need to display in here. Let's see. Yeah, so it's going to be between the text of the title and the content in Markdown. And actually, let me show you how we can start writing Markdown. If I want to type a title, I can say title. If I want to mention here, for example, this will be yellow, or code with beto.deb. This will detect that this is a website and this is how it looks. Okay, so this is the advantage of using Markdown. In the application, it looks really nice. It is extendable and allows the user to customize everything. Nice. Now, remember that we got the children files in here. Okay, so let's go ahead and display those in here. I'll say children files dot length greater than 0. If this is true, then I want to render something. Otherwise, I won't render anything. Okay, so I'll use a view. Inside this view, I'll use a theme text displaying the children files dot length and just say inner files. Okay, and children files dot map. We will iterate for each child and return a link. Okay, using the link from Expo Router. Now inside this link, I will have a touchable opacity from React Native. Okay, and then I'll also have a theme text that will be rendering the list item. So I'll use just like this child dot icon, and then I also have child dot title. Okay, now the link is yelling at me because I need to specify a key, so I'll provide a key. I'll use the ID, and then I also need to specify an href. Okay, href. Now the href, this is going to be an important thing, right? So at this point, we are inside the new Notion screen. But if I press into one of these children's, I want to go to the same screen, but pointing to a different file. Okay. So we can pass the path name in here. I'll pass the same screen that we are, Notion, new Notion. But the difference is that I'll pass as well a different parameter. In this case, viewing file will be a JSON.stringify, passing the child as a string. Okay, so basically I'm navigating to the same screen with different viewing file. And on top of that, I want to push this screen to the stack and use this component as child. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit save. At this point, we don't have any children, but we will have soon. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so one more thing that I want to do is just add a custom color for these items. It's going to be a blue, and this is how it looks. Okay, so I think that's all we need for the JSX that we are returning. Now we actually need the most important thing, which is saving the file. And for that, I will be using the stack screen. So let's go ahead and use this stack screen, okay, that we have here before. I'll set some options for the screen. The first one is going to be the header right, okay? And this header right would actually depend on the title, okay? So if we have a title, I will render a Notion button. Otherwise, okay, let's wait a second. Title is going to be done. And then on press, I will handle save. Okay. And finally, container style, it's going to have a margin right of 10. Margin right of 10. Of course, this is breaking. Yep, I'm missing the null in here. So let's hit save. That's working so far. And if I start typing something here, you can see that we have this beautiful button in the top right, which is very nice. Okay. So that's if we have a title, we can save, of course. If we don't have a title, we need to render a new button. So I'll go ahead and copy this. And instead of having a title, I will have an icon name, and this will be close. Okay. Now on press, this will be different. On press, I will have basically a function in here using the router dot set params. Okay. Now the reason I'm doing this is because we're gonna be passing parameters to this screen, and I want to reset these parameters every time I leave this screen or every time I close this screen. Okay. So I'll be setting parent ID and viewing file to an empty string. Parent ID, we will be passing a parent ID to get the parent of this current file, and also we will be passing the viewing file. Okay, so I'm resetting before I close this screen. Then I will have a validation using the router as well and check if we can dismiss this screen. Okay, if we can dismiss this screen, I'll say router.dismiss all, which basically clean the history of the screens, and I will show you why we are doing this in a moment. Then I also use the router replace to finally navigate to the tabs. Okay, so by replacing, I'm navigating back to the tabs no matter which screen I was, because let's say that we were in a screen that is inside 10 files, right? So we navigate 10 files in, and then I press done. So we need to dismiss all these screens before we leave. Otherwise, the next time that we try to navigate back, we will be having these screens in the stack. That's why I'm dismissing everything and then replacing to go to the tabs. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit save. And now we have this X. So if I press, I will go to the tabs home screen. And if I come back, you can see that this is how it looks. Cool. So this is working. Now let's handle the save, of course. So for saving, we're gonna need to create a function that we have in here already. So the first thing that I want to do is basically check if we don't have a title, just return. This is the base case. So if we don't have a title, I don't wanna do anything else. Now the next thing that I need to do is get the data that I'm about to save. So the data that I'm about to save, it's going to be this object that you can see here. I'm basically just setting the title to the state that we're using here. Description, it's going to be an empty string by default. Of course, if you want to extend this, you can do so. But just to keep simple this video, I'm just passing an empty string for these values. But of course, we can simply create a new input and get the description, get the cover photo, and everything else. I'm also hard coding the author ID. Keep that in mind. This will be my file because I'm the user with ID 1. But if you have authentication, of course, you need to specify the user, the current authenticated user in here. Type default as well, hard coded. Created at, I'm passing the current date. Parent file, this is an important one. The parent file. So if we are passing into the routes a parent, I will be creating this file with a parent ID. I need to change this to be number because this is going to be a string. So I need to transform this to be number. This is how we do it. Otherwise, I will be checking if we are viewing a file. If we are viewing a file, I will be using the parent file ID of that file. And if it has one, of course, and otherwise I will be using null. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Then it's going to be very easy. Once we have this data, we simply need to try. So I'll use a try catch. Console log error for now, just to keep things simple. And So what I want to do here is just validate if we are viewing a file, right? And it's very simple. If we have an item in here, because this item can be null, as you can see in here, this item can be null. So if we are not viewing a file, it means that, if we are viewing a file, it means that we need to update. Otherwise, it means that we need to create a new file, okay? So I'll have, a console log that says updating. And then down here, I'll say extended client.notion file.update. Okay. And then where ID equal to viewing file.id, of course. And finally, I'll say data.data, passing the data. Okay. So let's basically just copy this and put in the else case, but in this case, instead of updating, we are creating a new file. And if we are creating, we don't need to pass the where, we just need to pass the data. And of course, instead of update, we will have a create. Okay, so let's hit save. This is how it looks. Okay, so this is to create and update a file. But after that, I need to reset as well my parameters and my icon and my title and my text. So I'll just go ahead and set everything to be the default value again, as you can see here. And after that, I will navigate, but also I need to check if I can dismiss all the screens that I need to dismiss. I will do so and then go back to the tabs. Okay, so I hope this makes sense. Now, because we are using Prisma hooks, whenever we go back to this screen, we automatically will be triggering a refetch because the data has changed. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this out. Flight and done. And as you can see, we're able to see this flight. But at this point, the test notion and flight have the same order. But if I move this and then reload the app, this will remain as it is. Okay, cool. So yeah, we can, we can delete now these two that were the hard-coded ones. Okay, let's create one more. Tools, done. Then let's create this one, car, and I'll use my AI in here to insert some Markdown, and done. Okay, so far so good. Now we need to handle viewing a file and also creating a children file, right? So this is going to be very easy now. If we go to the item, draggable list item. So in this case, guys, we are, let me see. Yeah, so this is the Notion file item. Now in this case, we are, just using a touchable opacity in here. But this touchable opacity is just for the file, right? But let's use this touchable opacity to navigate to the create new Notion file using a link from Expo Router. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and paste this here. And then this link is going to be very similar to what we did before. I'll pass this as child. I push the screen and then I'll pass the href. I need to specify the path name, which is new Notion. And then I need to set the parameters. So in this case, we're going to be viewing a file. So I'll pass the viewing file. And this is going to be a JSON stringified Notion file. Okay, so let's hit save. Let's try to click on the card. And as you can see, this is working. Okay, so if I press done, and actually let me open the terminal in here so that we can see what's going on in here. Okay, so if I press done, you can see that we are updating. Here's the log. And if I create a new Notion, so if I say house done, we are creating because we are not passing anything in the parameters. Okay, so let's go back and let's go to the flight. Okay, so at this point, we are passing the entire Notion file. That's why we're able to see these default values. But if I type something here and press save and then come back, you can see that this is being stored in the database, which is really cool. By the way, we can still drag and drop. Okay. Now, one thing that I don't really like, guys, is that we don't have a really nice navigation. We are basically we don't have, like a stack navigation or presentation view. We are just suddenly appearing in the screen. And I want to have that navigation. And we're going to fix that in a moment. But before we do that, I want to add the functionality for the plus. Okay, so when we press the plus in this item, so inside this touchable opacity, we have this plus icon somewhere in here for the add. Here it is. So for this add, I want to use a new link as well from Expo Router. Okay, and this is going to be similar as well. href, and then path name. It's going to be new Notion as well. And this is really nice, guys. We're using the same screen for everything, but the only thing that is changing is the parameters. Okay, so I'll use a parent ID in this case, passing the Notion file.id. Okay, so what I'm doing here is navigating to this Notion file screen, new Notion screen, passing the parent ID, and then in the new Notion screen, we are detecting that we have a parent ID. Okay, so we have a parent file. And because we have a parent file, this navigation, this will be created with the parent file. Okay, so when I create, this file will be inside this. Okay, so let's try to do that. Press a plus, inside house, and done. Okay, and this is working just fine. Let's create inside house too. Done. Okay, we can close this. Then we can create inside calendar. Done. And this is working just fine. And we can still drag and drop this around. And then we can also, we are not able to drag each one of these, but we can navigate to each one of these, like this one. And this is working just fine. Now, in this case, we're able to see the inside files. And whenever I press these two, nothing is happening, right? So let's go to the new Notion. Okay, so we are already here. And we are displaying these child files, right? And we are using this link. And to push any of you, passing the path name to the new Notion, there's not a typo in here, but this is not working. The reason why this is not working is because we are using technically a stack, okay? So the hack that I found to fix this issue, it's basically create a stack screen that will be handling the new Notion. So these are tabs in the Expo Router. And if I create a new file, new Notion, you notice that they have the same name. And they also will have the same functionality, okay? So I'll say export default new Notion screen and hit save. Okay, I won't do anything else, but if you notice now, we have this really nice navigation. If I go to the tools, for example, and if I go back, if I go to the house, we have now this really nice navigation. And if I try to go inside a house, you can see that this is working fine. Okay, and I can keep going. So let's press done. Now, one thing that you might notice there is that the top left button, if I go inside house, let's say, okay, new Notion, it's saying, inside calendar, it's saying new Notion as well. So also another thing that you might notice is that we have this new Notion title, and this is not great, right? So we need to modify this in the new Notion screen to prevent to have this the same the same title for the back button. So let's go ahead and go to this file, and we have this stack screen. Now inside of these options, we can say header back visible equal to true. Okay, but then I want to say header back title equal to tests just for now. Okay, and it just changed, as you can see. Now I want to change the title as well to be equal to the title. Cool. Now, instead of having the title, what if we, for the back title, what if we have instead of this the parent file the title? If we have a parent file, right? Now, as you can see, if I go to the house, I see the tabs, right? But if I go inside house, I can go back to the house. But if I go inside the calendar, I can go inside house, which is the previous one. Okay. And now we have this really cool navigation just by creating this stack using the same component. It's not doing anything. It's just adding the stack, which allows Expo Router to use the navigation and everything else for this stack. But if I go to this tab, the functionality will remain the same. Okay, so let's do okay. Everything else still works fine. We're able to delete, we're able to navigate, and also if I press done, we can also navigate directly to a specific screen. Let's say that we want to go directly to the inside calendar. We're able to do that. We can change the icon, hit done, and this will be automatically updated very fast. You won't even notice. Okay guys, so let's fix a little bit the home screen. And to do that, we can simply go to the list. So let's search for draggable Notion list. Okay, here we have the file. And what I want to do now, it's basically just add a header for this list. Okay, so this is basically a flat list, right? So that means that we also have the header component here, and we can specify a component. So I'll go ahead and just create a component directly in here. This will be a React fragment, as you can see in here, and I will create a view. So inside this view, I will have just a text. So I'll say theme text, and I will say private files, hit save. And as you can see, this is working as the header, right? But I need a style in here. So for the sake and simplicity of this, I will just add a padding horizontal here of 12. And then I will also add a touchable opacity down here. For the handle action sheet, so this touchable opacity, make some room down here. This will have an iron icon. The name of this one would be arrow up. And then I will provide a size of 15. Color would be gray. And then we will have the same thing, but down, hit save. So for the touchable opacity, I need a flex direction row and align items to the center. Cool. So that's for the sorting logic. Sorry, center, hit save. And then whenever we press this, we should be able to update the sorting logic. Now, by the way, I won't be diving into the sorting logic, guys. And the reason for that is because right now, the Prisma ORM is not updating every time. I mean, it's not refetching when we change the query. And I will explain more in detail in a moment. Just let me finish this style. I just add a flex direction row. Okay, and align item center and justify content space between. Hit save. Okay, there we go. So basically what I was saying, guys, is that I would like to be able to sort these files, which means changing, instead of ordering these by order ascending, we could say something like created at descending, right? This is an option that we can give to the user. And we can change this, of course, using just a simple use state, right? Like storing the query in here and then changing it based on the select of the user. But what I was saying is that if we bind these to a variable, let's say sorted files in this case, and if we update this variable using use state, Prisma client won't detect this and won't refetch. That's why I won't be doing this right now, but maybe they will fix this in the future so that we can come here and change the logic. But as of now, I'll just leave it by letting the user sort these by dragging and dropping. Okay, like that, which is nice. Okay, so that's that. Let's scroll down. We have these buttons if you want to add the functionality here with the touchable opacity. And then we can have, for example, a fallback, right? So the fallback, I would put this here. So I will simply validate if we don't have any files. Then I want to render a theme text that says nothing to show. Okay. And let's just add some styling here. I'll say style color gray and then text align center. And then I'll need also a padding top of 12. All right. Now let's remove everything in here to see if we are able to see the nothing to show. Okay, and there we have it. Just like that, very easy. Let's create a new file, test. Okay, cool. We can navigate. Okay, so this is working great. I like this. So yeah, now let's get into building the component for the recent files. So let's go ahead and create a recent files.tsx, export default function, recent files, and return a, let's say, an empty tag for now. Okay. So the recent files basically will render the files ordered by created at, and then I just want to render 6 of them, and also I want to render files that do not have a parent, right? Basically just root files. So let's go ahead and get the files using the extended client from Prisma. I'll use a Notion file collection, use find many, and then we can say something like order by, created at, in order descending. Then I just want to take 6. I'll say take 6, where the parent file ID is equal to null. So this means we're going to bring only roots files, right? Cool. Awesome. So now I will be using as well the theme. So I'll be using my color scheme from React Native. Okay, so I'll change this to be a view from React Native as well. And then theme text in here, and then jump back in. Okay, this is the title, right? So let's go ahead and go to the, what is it, the index? Yes, and above the draggable list, I'll set the recent files component, hit save and close. Let's go back here, add a style. Let's create a styles dot container. Let's create this styling here. Actually, I need to say style sheet dot create container, and for this container we will have just a margin bottom of 10. Okay, hit save. Okay, we have that nice spacing in there. All right, so now for this theme text, I want to have a padding. So let's add a style in here. Padding horizontal of 10. There we go. That looks better. And also, I need to change the color of this as well. And I need to set this to be semi-bold. So I'll say type default semi-bold. As well, I want to do the same for the private file. So let's go to the list. Basically, I want to have the same text in both. Okay, and here. Cool. So I'll just say here type default semi-bold. Hit save. Okay, so now they both look the same in dark and light mode. Okay, so let's just keep them like that for now. Now in here, I will iterate over each file. But first of all, I need to validate, right? Files.length. If we don't have anything, then I want to show a theme text. Oops. Sorry, I use curly braces instead of parentheses. So let's use a theme text. Nothing to show as well. Just so that we know that we don't have anything. Okay, so nothing to show. If we don't have anything, then yeah, so this will be type default, nothing crazy. Just change the color to be gray. And text align center as well. And we also had a padding top, right, of 12. So that's it. I'll be using just, inline styles just to be quick in here. Anyway, so let's go down here and I'll create a scroll view using the React Native scroll view, of course, and then we can start iterating over the files. Okay, so for each file, we want to return a, for now, let's use a theme text. And we can render the file dot title, right? We need to provide a key. So let's use the file dot ID. Cool. So let's hit save. There we go. So we have just one file. So let's go ahead and create more. So I'll create this one, Mike. Let's create paint. Let's create one more. And they are coming, as you can see. Drums. Cool. So yeah, we should be fine with this. This is a scroll view, as you can see. But I want to have these items, from left to right. So we can say this is going to be horizontal. And then we can even add a content container style in here. Add a gap of 12 and then a padding of 10 to have some nice spacing, as you can see there. And by the way, we are just applying the padding to, we're just applying this padding horizontal to the text to prevent, to be able to drag up to the end of the screen, right? Because if I add this padding horizontal to the container, let me just show you quickly here, 12. And if I drag to the left, you can see that we are cutting before getting to the end of the screen. So to prevent that, we are not using a padding. That's why we want to show 100% of the screen, but we can still have this padding, right? So that we start dragging with a little bit of spacing in here. Cool, so that's that. Then this is horizontal. Then as well, I want to say show horizontal scroll indicator equal to false. That looks bad, so we need to hide it. And I think that's all we need for this scrollable thing. Now I need to create a new component to render in here. this component is going to get the file as property, and this component is going to display a beautiful shadow, and it's going to be animated as well. So let's go ahead and create this component. I will name this recent file card.tsx. Okay, export default function, recent file card. All right, so let's define some properties. Props. And this is going to be very simple. It's just a file. So let's say Notion file of type Notion file. And I'll grab this from the Prisma React Native client. Then I can say that this is going to take these props, and then we can grab the Notion file and start doing stuff, right? Okay, so let's return. Now, let's start with a touchable opacity. Okay. And inside this touchable opacity, I will have a theme text that will be rendering the icon. So Notion file.icon. And then I will also have a theme text that will be rendering the title. Okay, cool. Let's just keep this for now. Let's go back and change this to be the recent file card, passing the Notion file, and also adding a key in here, which is the file.id, and hit save. All right, and this is how it looks so far on the right. Let me put this in light mode. I think looks better. Anyways, let's go back to the recent file card. Okay, now in here, guys, we're going to have to, just styling as you want. But these squares basically should have an image or a gradient if you want, or a fallback image. So in this case, I will be using a linear gradient. Okay, and the linear gradient, it's actually going to, use a random gradient. So for that, I will be using some gradients that I have from one of our previous videos, where we learn how to use gradients with React Native, with Expo gradients. So let's create this gradients file. Okay, and I'll just copy paste linear gradient props from Expo linear gradient, and then I'm just defining these gradients that we created in a previous application. And if you are curious, just look for my video on linear gradient with Expo linear gradient, and you should be able to find this information. Or if you just want to come to the code and grab this array, you are welcome to do so by going to code.with-beto.dev. Now in here we have a get random gradient, and this is very similar to what we did to grab the random icon or random emoji. I'm just grabbing a random item from here and returning the colors. Now these colors, we're going to be using them in here. So I will be having inside this touchable opacity, I will be having a linear gradient. So let's go ahead and do that. But first of all, I want to see if we do actually have a cover photo, right? Because if we have a cover photo, then I want to show an image. But of course, we're not handling images in this video because, it will take me more time to do so. So for now, let's just stick with the linear gradient, which is going to be the default for any new file. And for the linear gradient, I will be passing some colors, and these colors are going to be generated by this function, right? Get random color. So let's say color equal to, I will be using use memo from React to memoize the result of get random gradient. And yep, let's just pass an empty array. Then I can use this color in here. And yep, that's going to be my linear gradient. Of course, we need to specify a style as well. So I'll say style equal to, I'll give it a height of 16 and then border top left radius of 16 as well as top right 16. All right, and that's how it looks so far. Okay. So yeah, let's go ahead and create some styles down here. And to do so, I'll just copy paste these two styles. Let me import these from React Native. I will have a container and each square is going to have a fixed width and height, as well as border radius of 16 and border width of 0.5. Icon would be the, in this case would be the emoji. And this is going to be position absolute, line height of 36, font size of 32, top 40, and left 6. You can play around with these values, guys. But for now, I'll just go ahead and apply this container style to the touchable opacity by saying style equal to a pass an array, grabbing the container and hit save. And that's how it looks so far. But then I need to change the colors, right? So let's add an object in here and check the background color based on the theme. So I'll say colors, add position theme. We need to use the theme. So let's say theme equal to use theme. Sorry, use color scheme from React Native. All right. There we go. So I'll be using the background secondary in this case, and then border color. This would be as well based on my colors, add position theme, text, and I'll use 20% of opacity. Okay, and that's how it looks. Actually, we could add, if you want, some. I think we can have an extra. No, actually, we cannot. Yeah, this has 10%. Anyways, let's just keep it like that for now. Let's see how it looks in dark mode. Yeah, it looks good, I think. Cool. You can play around, of course, with this if you want to. Anyways, let's just as well. Yeah, let's just keep this like that. I think this looks good. Now let's go down here and add the icon style in here. Okay, hit save. Okay, that's where we want it. Now let's add one more style in here. And this would be a title style. So let's go down here and create this style. Title, font weight of 600, padding top, just playing around with the position. Let's use the title, hit save, and that's it. This is how it looks. Okay, cool. So this should be working fairly fine right now. But let's say that I delete the drums, for example. So I'll just delete. You can see that we don't have any animation or anything like that. Even if I add a new file, we won't have any animation. So to do that, to have some animations, we're going to be using animated from React Native reanimated. Okay, so make sure that you import it from there. In this case, we will be wrapping this in a view. Okay, so that's the animated view. And this is going to be very easy, guys. We need to specify a layout, linear transition from React Native reanimated, as you can see here. And then we can start specifying some really nice animations on entering, like slide in left. And also exiting, which means when we delete an item from this list, we can slide out left or down or right or whatever. You can play around with these animations. And then finally, I will be adding a style. So let's hit save. All right, and you can see the animation there. Let's delete paint. Okay, you can see the animation as well. And if we create a new one, we can see the really cool animation from left. I think this looks amazing. And yeah, let's keep it that way. Now I'll add a border radius of 16 here. All right. And every time that I change this, you can see that, actually, I don't think I need this border radius. You can see that we are re-rendering and recalculating the color, which is fine. Now, in this component, I will be creating a shadow, okay? So that means that I need to specify a background color as well. So I'll just go ahead and copy and paste this, hit save. And this is the shadow, as you can see there. But I don't know if you can see, we have the square in here. So that's why I need to provide the border radius as well in there. And now we have this really cool shadow, but the shadow needs to be in this view. Otherwise it would look bad. But yeah, basically to achieve this shadow, I'm just using this style and giving out opacity. You can play with these values, like I said before, if you want a stronger shadow like this, or just a very minimal shadow like I like in this one. It's really nice. So yeah, let's create a new one. We have this really cool animation. We delete, and just like that, this looks very smooth and fine. Okay, cool. And also, by the way, we are just gonna be bringing 6 items. So let's go ahead and create more items in here just for fun. So 3, and then 4, and then 5, and now we can see that we're only bringing 6, right? Pretty cool stuff. Yeah, I think that's all we need in here. Now, one thing that we're missing is that when we press one of these items, we want to navigate. And also, if I, well, you can, add anything that you want in here. So the only thing is that we need to navigate to this screen, new Notion. It's going to be very similar to what we had in here before. But actually, when I was playing around with this project, guys, I tried to use the link component from Expo Router, and I had an issue. I think it's because of the animated view. But the solution or the workaround that I found is that I'm going to be using navigation from the hook, use navigation. And I'm importing this from Expo Router, by the way. And this navigation will allow me to navigate using this touchable opacity instead of having the link. So it's not the best solution, I would say, but it's a workaround because the link component is not working in this case. I'm not sure why. But anyways, let's just say navigation.navigate, and then we can say new Notion, which is the name of the screen. And then we can pass the viewing file. We need to pass this as a string. So let's say JSON stringify and stringify the Notion file. Okay. Of course, TypeScript is going to yell at me. I'll just go ahead and ignore this and delete this, of course. All right. And let's try to navigate to the file 5, and it's working. And I think I'm happy with this solution so far. Okay. And this is really nice, right? Because I went to the, let's say I'm going to the number 3. As soon as I press done, basically I'm editing, although I didn't change anything, I'm editing this file, which means the recent files are ordered by created at. Okay, so this shouldn't be happening, right? This should be updated at descending. Okay, let's done this. Yeah, so if I do that, basically we are updating and we are reordering every time, which is really nice. So if I do that with the test, for example, done is gonna be the first one in here. Okay, so that's really cool. And yeah, so let's keep in mind that we are doing the updated at. I'm not sure why we were bringing, if we were sorting by created at. Oh, okay. Let's go to the, okay. Let's go to the new Notion actually quickly here. And let's view the handle save function. Yeah, so we are updating the created at every time that we create a new file. Actually, I don't think we need to do this, right? So I'll go ahead and delete that. Let's go ahead and go back and leave this as it was at the created at. And then I think, yeah, so if I go here and press done, yeah, this won't do anything. But if we leave the, sorry, let me go back. Let's change this to be updated at. Hit save. All right, and then let's test. Okay, and this is working fine. Cool. Very cool. And the cool thing is that we can, navigate quickly to the last edit in here. So this is the last one. Let's go to the number one. Okay, so now that's the last one. And you can increase this one, right? So for example, 12 or something like that. Anyways, this is how you can do it, guys. Fairly easy. This card looks amazing in dark and light mode. And yeah, pretty cool. All right, so I guess the only thing we're missing, okay, I don't need this anymore, I think. Okay, this looks fine. Yeah, I guess the only thing we're missing would be the search screen. Okay, now for the search screen, we're going to be recycling the explore screen that came with this template. And this is going to be fairly easy, guys. It's just to exercise the queries that we can do with Prisma ORM and just to have fun. And yeah, that's all. So I'll change this to be explore screen, or actually, yeah, explore screen. Explore screen. All right. And of course, I won't be using this. I will be using a theme view. Let's go ahead and delete these things. This is a large file. Okay, there we go. Nice. So we have this theme view. This is going to be, like I mentioned before, a very simple component. So I'll just go ahead and replace these styles with a container, which is going to have a flex of one, a section and an item, just margins, just some spacing, nothing crazy. And from here, I will be adding, the style of container to this theme view. And then I add a save area view from React Native. Then add the style of container as well to make sure that we have, the entire space available. Then let's create a scroll view because we're going to have some items in here. All right, so for this scroll view, I'll add the style of the container as well. So let's say style container and then content container style. Here's where I want to add my padding of 15. All right. And then let's create some containers in here. So I'll create a view from React Native and I'll give it a style of section. Okay. And inside this section, I will have a theme text. Okay. And let's just say today. I want to display today files. Okay. So this is going to look like this. Then let me just add the type of default semi-bold and hit save. All right. Let's go to the Explorer, and that's the today. We have the scroll view, which is really cool. And then we can start iterating over the today files. But of course, I haven't queried these files. Okay, so let's try to do this. Const today files, extended client from Prisma dot notion file dot use find many. Okay, where updated ads. Okay, now if I want to bring today files, I need to know the start of today and the end of today so that I can let Prisma know that the updated ad is greater than and less than. Okay, so for that, I just went ahead and used ChatGPT to generate this today, start of today, and end of today dates. And now I can just grab this, put it in here, and put it in here, and hit save. Okay, and I need a command here. hit save. Okay, and this is how we can, grab this. Now I need to sort this, order this by updated at descending. Hit save. All right, and this is how it looks. Now we can come down here and iterate over these today files dot map, and then we can iterate for each file. And for each file, I will be returning a link actually from Expo Router. Okay. Okay, and I have a touchable opacity from React Native. Yep, and I'll add a style in here, which would be from my styles.item. Inside this touchable opacity, I have a theme text. So I'll say theme text. This will be like a list of elements. So I'll have the file.icon as well as the file.title. And then for the link, I need to specify a key. So let's say file ID, href. This is going to be very similar to what we've been doing. So let's say new Notion. And finally, params, it's going to be viewing file json.stringify. Remember that we need to pass this file as a string. So let's go ahead and hit save. And this is how it looks. So we have the item. Now I want to specify a specific colors for these. So I'll say color, and then I just use this color AFF. Of course, this is a string. Hit save, and that's it. This is how it looks. Now, if I press one of these, we should be able to navigate. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this is not working very well. Let's see what's going on in here. Okay, so I think I need to press this. I need to pass this as child, by the way. So if I pass this as child, this will be working just fine. Awesome. So yeah, this is working amazingly. Now these are files from today, and we can do basically the same thing for last week files. So for last week, basically we need to know the start of the last week and the end of the last week, just as we did in here. So let's go ahead and create these two variables. So the start of last week, we will start with the start of today and then set date by getting the date less minus the start of today, get day -6. Basically, this is the start of last week, 7 days ago, and end of last week's yesterday. Okay, this is how we can calculate these two variables. And then we can simply copy paste the same query that we have here and just change the name to be last week files, passing the greater than and less than end of last week. Okay, descending as well. And finally, we can simply copy a new section, which is like this view, and paste it down here with different text, of course, last week files, and hit save. Of course, we don't have nothing from the last week because we did this today in one day. So this is cool, right? So we don't have anything. Maybe we could render like a fallback in here. And then also you could like integrate a search input to search a specific file by title. But of course, that is going to be outside of the scope of this tutorial because, this is being a really large tutorial. But anyways, if you're still here, if you made it this far, I'm proud of you. This is a really tough project, I would say, especially if you are not familiar with all the moving components like Prisma, like Expo Router, like how to handle queries and stuff like that. What is local first, for example. But I really hope this video, I really hope this video was helpful for you. And yeah, I think this is basically what I wanted to show you. Just to recap a little bit, we have the functionality of dragging and dropping. We are storing this in the database, the sorting order. And from that, we can have as well nested files, okay? Childs inside childs. And we are handling this navigation dynamically. We can navigate between items and then go back. We're pushing those screens to the stack. Then we are also creating passing parameters. If we are, if we already have this, we can just pass it and modify it quickly, hit done, and that's it. And this is going to be saved very quickly locally in the device. And yeah, so we also have dark mode support. I mean, this is a very complete application. I think from here you can build a very powerful application yourself. But yeah, if you find this video helpful, please give it a like, leave me a comment down below if you want me to create a specific video or something like that. Don't forget to go to codewithbeto.dev, check out the courses that we have there, and also check out this project. It will be available completely for free in the project section at codewithbeto.dev. You will find the source code, you will find the dependencies, and everything about this application. So I hope you like this video. I hope you learned something new, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.